Hi everyone. My name is Lisamarie Vazquez, formerly known as Lisamarie Gordils, and today I want to share my testimony with you. Um, I never know how to begin these things, right? Um, so approximately 25 years ago, um, all right. So this is like a little bit easier. My biological mom's name is Lucy. My adoptive mom name is Maria. Just so I don't confuse myself or confuse you. Approximately 25 years ago, um, my biological mom, Lucy, she became pregnant with me, right? And at the time, she had an older son who had been removed from her custody because of her drug use. Um, and he had a combination of autism and Down syndrome, and he had been removed from her care because she was using drugs, and he was in the household. He was in foster care in the Gordils residence, Maria's my adopted mom's house at the time. So she's caring for this young boy, my brother, when she gets a phone call on a day such as the 19th of January, and the doctors tell her, hey, like the little boy that you have, Joseph, his little sister has just been born. And my mother is one of those typical Hispanics to the very end. And she's like, they're like telling her, like, listen, she has a lot of things going on with her, and she's gonna be tough to care for, being because of her delicate health or whatever. She's one of those shaking babies, right? Because she's had drugs in her system. She has a ball of water at the back of her head. She has a cone head. She has rabbit ears, and my mama, all she heard was like, "Girl, oh, I like girls. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bring her." My mom is funny, and whatever. So they're like, okay. So I'm discharged from the hospital, and they take me to the Gordils residence. And when I got there, my older sister, her daughter Aria, was if I'm not mistaken, she was a psychology student. So when she saw me, I was like a project for her. So she like was trying to teach me like cognitive exercises and hand-eye coordination, all this stuff. But above all, she had faith, and so at the time, she took me to church, and they presented me to the Lord. They pray, and they believed in a miracle, and the miracle happened because I was walking, and the doctors that said I wouldn't be a normal little girl, I had to stand amazed at what God had finished doing in my life. But that wasn't it, right? So, I growing up, around the age of 6, we were in court, right? We were in court a couple of times, and at age 6, I remember we changed my name from my birth name to what it is now, Lisamarie, and and my last name as well. But like as a child, like I knew I was in court. Like I knew I was showing off. Like I knew my ABCs, and I knew what I wanted to be when I was older. Like I knew all these things. I thought I was grown, and I'm in the court. I'm like, yes, Your Honor. Like who I thought I was. I don't know. But point is that happened, and I didn't understand at the time. But moving on with life, right? When I was in 5th grade, I had always been involved in school. I loved being in plays. Um, I loved like all of that stuff, and I was my class president. Like I was on it, and I was in the office one day, and I came across my student file, and I remember seeing my old name scratched out and my new name beneath, and I was like, why? Like, now that I think about it, why did they change my name? And why didn't my last name stay the same? Why was my last name different? So at that point, Miss Know It All, aka me, I'm like, I know, I got a different daddy. So I come from my mom, and I'm like, Mom, we need to talk. And she's like turning colors, because my mom is like a nervous wreck, and she's like, what happened? I'm like, well, I need to know if dad is my dad. And she's like, she starts crying. Un show, a show. So I'm like, okay, so he is or he's not. And she told my sister, Brenda, and my sister Aria, and they were like, it was like an intervention thing. And at the time, I don't recall them telling me the truth. But I do think that after like a family meeting, they decided to tell me that I was adopted. And like I knew it, but like I was trying to find a way to like confront her about it without like being like, oh, I overheard. But like I knew. So, I had to use like the daddy thing as a decoy, right? So they tell me, but I specifically remember being told not to tell anybody. And I don't think that at the time I understood it the way it was said to me. I think that they didn't mean for it to be a secret, but that's how I took it. And I was like, wow, like I'm not allowed to tell anybody I'm adopted. Like, what's so bad about that? Like, what's so wrong? Like, why do I have to be ashamed of like where I came from? And I remember being angry about that. But I obeyed and I didn't tell anybody for a while. I graduated elementary school and I'm in middle school now, and I had a friend at the time named Rochelle. And I remember telling Rochelle, I'm like, Rochelle, I'm adopted. And Rochelle, like, she had never met an adopted person a day in her life. And she's like, what? How? And I was like, I don't know, like, and I'm like telling her what I knew about it. I'm like, listen, like, my mom was a drug addict, like, like, she lost her rights with me, like, I'm adopted now. And Rochelle's like, let's find them. And at the time, like, social media wasn't that at large. So, like, I always thought about it. I was like, no, I don't need them. Like, they didn't love me enough to fix their life. Like, that was my mentality for so long. For so many years in my adolescent life, I was in church. I loved the Lord, but I was so angry. And I had so much resentment in my heart. And I remember I was always fighting with the Lord in my room. And I would tell him, like, why would you allow for me to be born, to not even have my mother or my father, or to know where I came from? Why would you allow for me to have been born? Why not die? Like, what was the purpose of that? And I remember being so angry at the Lord because I didn't think that it was fair that of all the people in the world, I had to be the one to be adopted and to live with a family that wasn't my biological family. Because, like, as a child, all of that is, like, really big. Like, in school, like, oh, where you from? Oh, I'm Dominican. Oh, where you from? I'm Puerto Rican. Who you look like? Your mom or your dad? Oh, I look like my mom. Oh, and some people say I look like my grandma. Like, I didn't know any of that about me. Like, I didn't even know who I was. And I remember I used to write a lot of poetry. And I used to write poetry about belonging and how, like, I knew I didn't belong, but I knew it wasn't that I wasn't wanted either. It's not that I was treated badly. I was treated like a princess. But it didn't take away the fact that I knew that I didn't belong and that I had questions about who I was and questions about where I came from. And I was so angry at them for not loving me. And I was so angry at them for not changing. And I was so angry at them for giving up, because from what I knew, they had given up. They didn't fight anymore. You accepted defeat. You were okay with not having your daughter anymore. And I was so upset at my biological parents until I'm in high school. I believe it was my second year of high school or my third. Can't quite. Oh, I think it was my second year. That's not important. But anyways, I was in high school. And I was working at this law firm, and I became curious. I came across some newspaper articles where we had made front page, like years ago when I was little. We made front page. My mom had been asking to please see her daughter after her parental rights had been terminated. And I remember seeing that video clipping, and I was like, wow. When I became curious, I was working at a law firm. We had this database called LexisNexis, and it's like this database where you could see people, and I'm pretty sure I wasn't supposed to do that. But anyways, I did. I'll be honest. And I looked it up, and I found, like, her information. I was like, that's interesting. But that wasn't enough for me. Like, I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to meet her. I didn't want to, like, have interaction. I just wanted to see. Like, I wanted to see what my mother looked like. I wanted to see what my father looked like. I wanted to know if, how are you doing today? Do I have siblings? Like, whatever happened to my brother? Like, you know, like I wanted to know about me. And so when I came across that newspaper article, I went on Google. Shout out to Google. I went on Google and I Googled her name and my birth name. And a documentary pulled up about me. And I was like, wow, like everything is here. So I watched the documentary and it was like my mom fighting for me. And all these years, but I thought that she did it. She actually was, but she actually started fighting after it was too late. And so many emotions filled me because I didn't know how to feel anymore. I felt like you weren't my mom, so I don't have to love you. But I also have a heart big enough, and I love the Lord, and I understand that I have to honor you. And so I was found conflicted with what the Word of God taught me and what I was feeling. And I feel like many times that happens in the church with our young people. And I feel like oftentimes nobody ever wants to address the fact that they feel things, you know? And I was so confused. I didn't know how to feel. Like I wanted to do right by the Lord because I love Him, and He intervened in my life when everyone thought that I was gonna be a lost cause. And he arrived to my life to make a miracle exactly when they had already checked me off as a vegetable, a non-normal child, right? And I was just conflicted. And I remember after seeing that documentary, we had church that night. And I had cried in my room. And all I could do was give God glory. And I just said, thank you. Like, I don't know how things could have turned out if I would have stood with them. I don't know how things could have turned out if I never would have known of their existence. But thank you. And I remember that night I worshiped God and I cried like I never cried before. And I worshiped Him like I never worshipped before. And I remember I sang Tu arte en mí by Rocío Cruz. And I was like, al mirar atrás es como despertar de un sueño tan amargo que me hizo llorar. Y mis ojos se pudieron abrir cuando llegaste tú. Y a ver la cicatriz de lo que hiciste en mí. Al mirarme en el espejo puedo sonreír. Hoy puedo brillar y el mundo hablar, porque has demostrado tu arte en mí. And for those of you who don't speak Spanish, it's just saying like, I can thank you for putting me together in the way that you did after everything I had to experience, you know. And I reached out to the producer. And I said, you know, the little girl that you're talking about in the documentary, that's me. And he couldn't believe it. And he was like, we've looked for you. And I can't believe you found us. Like, and he wanted to like do this interview. And I remember being angry at the time. I was like, I don't want to do no interview. I just want to know where I came from. I just want to know what everyone else gets to know. Like, why is it fair that I don't get to know? You know? And I finally knew. He didn't tell me at the time. He couldn't give me information because I was only 17. But on my 18th birthday, I remember getting an email. And it gave me like her phone number and her like their Facebooks and whatnot. So I looked and I watched them. I was like a stalker. I watched them and I had so many emotions. I was always surrounded by people, but I had felt alone for such a long time. And now the reason as to why I felt so alone is finally here. And I didn't know how to take it. I didn't know what to do with the information that was given to me. And so my pastor, who's like my mom, I love her to death. She helped me grow from a lot of the pain that I had. And she always told me I had to forgive them. And she always told me that She always told me that I had to honor them regardless of what happened, because she helped me to understand that they weren't there not because they didn't love me. They weren't there because they were sick. And I had to understand that. And I was still fighting with it, but I wanted to do right by the Lord. I just wanted to please God. And so it took absolutely everything in me one day to just message them and say, hey, like, it's me. It's me as your daughter. Like, and it was like this whole emotional thing. And I remember, and it was February of my 18th birthday, and I went out to Queens and I met them. And they cried so much, and I saw their pain. And I cried because my brother was there, and I have a little sister, and my dad, they were still together. You know, and it was just so emotional. All those years that I had been so angry, like, there you have it, like, the answer's in front of your face. What more do you want? And after that encounter, my rebellion came right back. It was like I wasn't satisfied. I was a little brat. And I told the Lord, I said, now what? Like, what do I do now? Like, okay, I met them and, like, my nasty self, right? And I told the Lord, I was like, I don't know what to do. And I didn't speak to them again for months. I said, I just wanted to meet them. I would be like, I just wanted to meet them. I don't want them to be part of my life. I don't care. And I was still angry. I was still so angry. And then time went on, and people would ask me about myself, and I couldn't tell my story without crying. And I realized that I still hadn't healed. I was still hurt, and I was still resentful about everything. And it wasn't until I started to share my story that I saw how other people felt like me. Other people felt alone in a room full of people. Other people felt that they were supposed to do the right thing and couldn't find it inside of themselves to do it. And I learned that the only way that I was going to be able to heal was to share the story that God gave me. Like, my testimony, I understood was going to be, sometimes you have to be a bridge so that someone else can go over. I understood that sometimes you need to be put in difficult situations so that other people could see God in you. Other people could see, oh wow, like, God healed her heart. She was angry for such a long time, but look what God was able to do, you know? I feel like what testimony can I give about God if my life was perfect? My life is far from perfect, and my life and my situation is something that I deal with all the time to this day. Like, it's hard, but it's not impossible. I serve a God who gives me the strength to do it every day. And every year now, I promise myself to tell my story to every set of kids that I teach. And I find that they understand. They see God in a different light because of what he did in me. I find that people that I encounter, that I share my story with, can see God in a different light through what he did with me. Everyone sees God as, he condemns, he does this, he does that. Or some people see him as overly happy. He just loves the world regardless of how many times you fail him. And while both of them are correct, they can see that he, above all things, he's a faithful God. And I chose to serve him, and I chose to try to do right in my youth. And I chose to, I'm not perfect, but I chose to want to do right by him. And he has blessed me in so many ways, ways that I can't even begin to describe. And I'm just thankful for what the Lord has done in my life. Years later, we don't have the best relationship, but they were at my wedding. They were there, they cried. And sometimes I feel like such a horrible person because I was upset at them for such a long time. But I didn't realize that they were hurting too. Like, in all of this, in one mistake, you lost a child. I can imagine what that's like. I'm not a mom, but I can imagine the battles that I faced were very similar to the ones that they did, because regardless of what they tried to do, that ship had sailed, and that was a child that they couldn't get back legally, and I continue to give God glory for what he's done and what he continues to do. And if you came across this video and you have identified with me at some point or another, understand that if you've been hurt by the church, you've been hurt by family, you've been betrayed, God gives us situations to deal with, and he puts us in many different predicaments, and it's never about you and it's never about me. The honor and the glory will continue to be and will always be his. He will continue to be God regardless of the circumstance. And many people have come to understand God in a different light because of what happened, because of my story and what happened to me. And maybe it's time that you start to share your story too, so that people can understand the greatness of our God. That when the doctors determined me as a sick child, as a vegetable, as someone who would never be anything, I can stand here and say, because of his mercy, because of his grace, I am who and what I am. Amen. Today, I strive to be a virtuous wife to my amazing husband that he's put at my side. Today, I try to be a good daughter to the woman who took a leap of faith and loves me like no one does. To my pastor who dedicated her time to helping me cope with all of my emotions. It's not it, and I give God glory for her life, because it's not everyone who knows how to sit down and take an emotional wreck and try to, in some way or another, help them make peace with, if you will, their demons. Your life and your situations, there's some of them are things that are not going to go away. They're not. This your reality is what God chose for you to live with, but you choose to be happy and you choose to make life what you want of it. I chose not to be another statistic in foster care. That wasn't me. That was never gonna be me. Why? Because I made that decision. I am not a product of my environment. I am not a product of the system. I'm a product of the grace of God. And because I chose to follow Christ, and because I chose to believe in a God who never stopped believing in everything that could come of me if I put my life in his hands. And so today I encourage you, and I pray for whoever and the people that will come to see this video, right? I pray that the Lord gives you the strength and the courage to tell your story as well, because at the end of the day, God has been good. And it may not be rainy, and it may not be rainbows and sunshines every day, but I choose joy, and I choose to be happy, and I choose to be still and understand that he is God every day of my life. And Philippians 4:11 tells me that I have learned to be content regardless of what my circumstances. Amen. And Romans 8:28 gives me the promise that if I love him the way I do, that everything will work for the good of his works, of what he has done. And I believe that, and today I invite you to believe that as well. This has been my testimony. Thank you for listening to me, for being patient as I, unraveled the details. May God continue to bless each and every one of you, and to he be the glory always. God bless you.